Hey, welcome to the spoiler section for the Blood Over Bright Haven review. I'm Connor, the chronicler, and if you haven't watched the first part, maybe check that out, and maybe make sure you've read this book if you don't want to get anything spoiled for you. So I've got about 5 topics here for spoilers, and we're going to start with the romance. Like I mentioned in the first video, the romance was the thing that my sister, my friend, and I all generally found the weakest in this book. Now, I'm not against a good romance in a book, and there were some elements of the romance that worked for me here, but Sayona and Tamil, the two main characters, kind of do start longing for each other. And there's some kind of what we all deemed cringy writing about maybe Sayona talking about how strong Tamil's arms are when he picked her up, or his gray eyes and his gaze, that you can tell that they're starting to really want something more between their relationship for one another. And they're both two oppressed peoples in this world. So it's understanding that these two develop kind of a respect for each other, but that's kind of where I wish their relationship ended, was a friendship where the two of them respect each other a lot and help push each other higher, rather than kind of, I feel like this romance plotline was almost inserted into there to help the book sell for kind of like the trad sales. Like, people love generally romance in a book, I feel like, and maybe the target demographic of this book wants that romantic element. So I can definitely see why it's in here, but I don't think that it was done the best. Now, there's nothing too smutty or anything like that at all. It's not a big focus of the book, the romance, but its writing was not the best in our opinion. And when I was reading this book, like I mentioned earlier too, I actually went on Goodreads and checked for like a romantasy or a romance tag, because I was like, I could see the way Sayona was talking about Tamil very early on, and I was concerned. I was like, oh my god, I hope this doesn't go where I think it might go. And unfortunately it doesn't. It's mostly still focused on the themes about colonialism, oppression, and sexism, so I'm glad it stayed on that track at least. Another topic I want to cover here is the magic, because it's probably the most interesting part of the book overall. So around the halfway point, Sayona and Tamil start making some pretty big discoveries. Tamil becomes her magic assistant, kind of as a joke at first, because he's a janitor. Then he gets kind of forced upon her as far as being her assistant is concerned. And the two of them start making some pretty good progress, because Sayona, if nothing else, she's a magical prodigy, that she does really good work. And it's interesting because the magic here, the mages are good at like different specific areas of magic. And Sayona happens to be a very good mapper. So all this magic requires an energy source, and she's really good at finding energy sources. Very early on in this book, at the very beginning, you learn about something called the Blight. And the Blight is essentially this evil menace that is just wiping out everything outside of Tehran. Tehran is surrounded by this magical barrier that stops the Blight from killing anybody inside of it. And I think that all of us, me, my sister, and my friend, we were all basically on the track that maybe Tehran is causing this blight, maybe the magical barrier is causing this blight, but something seems like this blight is not so universal in its nature, that it has a deeper, darker source. And you do find out right around the halfway point that Tehran is the source of the blight. The magic itself is the blight. When Sayona's mapping, you're actually mapping to look for living energy in the real world. They have this thing called God's bounty, the source of the magic, that God provided Tehran with this unlimited kind of bountiful source of energy that they can use to perform magic. And none of that is true at all. Definitely religion and kind of the foundations of the society is a big thing here, where it's set up in a way to block and obscure what's really happening for the magic and how it works and how it operates, to make it not hurt the mages as bad when they use the magic. So essentially, when you're mapping, you are finding, be it a person, a bush, a rabbit, any kind of living material outside of the barrier. You're finding it, and then you are draining it. And the blight will unravel the organic material and turns it into energy that can be used for the Tehran magic. You also learn, kind of around this halfway point, that the Quen, there was witches for the Quen, and they are actually the ones that were the original source for this magic, but they weren't using it in the way that Tehran was. Tehran went and took this magic, one of the founders of the religion or the society, I believe. He went out and took this magic and started employing it to his own dark purpose. And everything since then has been built upon them being justified in using this magic and kind of obscuring where the energy source for the magic comes from. So what Siona does, since she's a prodigal mapper, is she kind of breaks the rules that the religion has set in place. Tomo kind of pushes her, and Siona is in a very good position as a character to be this rule breaker because she's already kind of breaking the unspoken rules that are there as far as females being high mages. So she goes and pushes the boundaries, and what she discovers is that there's like a mapping device on the magical typewriters that they use, and everything's blurry through that mirror. And she creates this thing she calls the mirror, the Freerin mirror, which Freerin's her last name, which allows her to see perfectly into the energy source. And the energy source is literally just outside of the barrier. There's like off limits energy coordinates, and that is literally like the city of Tehran itself. And Tommel actually starts putting this together a lot faster than Siona does before the clear mirror is opened for her. Because he comes from outside the barrier. He's a hunter. He's good at mapping things in his head, and he starts mapping this out already before her that these coordinates are like the whole area around Tehran and where he's from. So she opens this barrier, and she just kills I think it's a deer or something, and it just unravels before her eyes, and it's like, holy crap, I'm literally just wiping people out, living things out to feel this magic. And that really, it breaks her for quite a while. It shatters her faith in what she thought was true and what she had worked her whole life for. And I think that's great. Really, I love exploration of shattering of faith and finding new purpose. Tommel's also absolutely reviled by this revelation that he has discovered, but he's not exactly shocked by what he sees, because from a very young age, Tommel has entered the Tehran society, and he's been there for 10 years now, and he knows that this city, what does the city do, the society do? It chews up Quen and spits them out, and if they can't work, they're literally just killed. They're tossed outside the barrier, and guess what? The whole area surrounding the city it is like a constant blight source. It's constantly siphoning energy to fuel the reserves of magic for the whole city itself. So if anybody tries to cross into the city, there's an extremely high chance that they're going to die and become just fuel for the city. And this is kind of what I'm talking about with some of the messaging being blunt. Tehran is literally a machine and unsustainable society that, what does it do? It takes other cultures and their peoples, and it chews them up and spits them out and kills them to fuel itself. This is, I feel like that messaging is a little bit more subtle than some of the men bad messaging that is delivered in this book, where it is definitely, there's like almost no redeemable male characters outside of Tommel in this book at all. And like I said before, I don't really have a problem with any of this sexism messaging. Sexism's a real thing, people are oppressed in society, but it's so blunt with some of this messaging that, and it's repeated too, from the beginning of the book to the end of the book, that these mages are just the worst. These men that run the society are just the worst. So that did get a little long in the tooth. The book's not too long though, thankfully, so I wasn't like beaten into the ground by it by the end. But even my sister, she agreed that the messaging is a little too overt and bluntly delivered. As far as the other high mages are concerned too, there's this Renthorn character who is definitely like the main antagonist. He's also a prodigy and kind of Siona's main rival when it comes to making this scientific discovery that they want to expand the barrier, and they need the best mages to work on it to really make it happen. So he's her main competition in that area, and he is just an unredeemable piece of shit. He tries to, sexually make advances on Siona that she doesn't want, force himself upon her. He just steals and takes credit for work from all those around him. He is just so power hungry. And one thing I do think was good is that Siona is so obsessed with the magic. She's like, at first you're kind of like, for me at least, She kind of seems maybe a tiny bit like a Mary Sue, but no, Sayona is like a deeply flawed character. She is so obsessed with magic that she has let other parts of her life atrophy, like her relationship with her family, how much she really should tell them she loves them and care for them, and all those around her. She states that Tomo really is like her first friend ever. So she is a flawed character, and because she's so like devoted to this magic, she starts developing traits that are like those she really doesn't like, the male high mages and archmages and such, of just being so focused on this power and wanting more of it. So she definitely develops some traits of that, and she recognizes that in herself at certain points during the book. For me, the best character outside of Sayona and Tomo was Brigham, who is Sayona's tutor, her mentor, and the one that really pushed for her to be one of the high mages. He pushed the other high mages, said, hey, and archmages, he said that she is like one of the best of all time he's ever seen at mapping, and he really thinks she should have a seat up here. So Brigham, he seems like he's championing for female equality for most of the book, and you want kind of Sayona too wants to believe this guy, wants him to be everything that he has said he is, but you start learning that Brigham, he runs an industrial magic factory, and he employs a lot of women, a lot of Quen women specifically. One of the consequences for the women working for him and the equipment and kind of stuff they're dealing with is that it affects their ability to give birth to healthy babies. And Tomo helps shed this light for Sayona, and it's pretty bad what he's doing. And really, you've come to find out that everything that Brigham's doing for Sayona is penance for himself. He knows what he's doing to these people. He knows the source of the magic. You come to find out that all these mages, really, the high mages and the archmages, they know what they're doing. They know where the magic's coming from, the energy for the magic. And he's trying to find some kind of redemption for himself. And he's doing that through Sayona, trying to say, hey, this Sayona should be elevated to this status, that there should be some form of equality, that female mages can be there, because he knows what he's doing to the Quen women that are working for him and really where the magic's coming from. So I felt like those revelations were good ones, and that makes him more than just like a one-note character. He's got more depth to him than somebody like Renthorn or a lot of the other mages that are just, oh ho ho, Sayona, you are a woman, your emotions are out of control. You need to get lobotomized so you don't have these emotions and you can't be a high mage. No, he's got more depth to him, and that makes him definitely more of an interesting character. So that's really all the spoilers topics that I wanted to cover for now. After going through this section, it kind of made me realize there are more things I want to bring up in my non-spoiler section, so I'm going to go back and record a little bit more for that, but that's about it here for this review. I hope you liked it. If you did, subscribe and maybe leave a comment about what you thought about the book, but other than that, have a good one, and I'll talk to you later.